Hey, welcome today to our discussion on the future of deep water drilling and the offshore energy. So, just a few years ago, I was making these videos outlining my thesis, and it really seemed the offshore sector was poised for a major rebound. But that was initially it was planning out perfectly. But as we moved through the later half of 2024 and into 2025's, delays have pushed expectations further down the line, and we've seen a steep decline in the price of the stocks of the offshore sector. So today we're going to break down why this has happened, what the industry outlook is, and whether deep water drilling still has a promising future. So back in 2022 and 2023, the offshore drilling sector was looking really good. As you can see from these two charts, everything was trending to the right-hand side. So we can see day rates were climbing up. Average day rate was around 450K, and they were only moving to the right-hand side. So they were kept consistently creeping up, and utilization was also creeping up. So everything was really looking amazing in the offshore sector. And this really fueled a lot of investor confidence, which was reflected in the share price. So if we take a random point in at the beginning of this bull market when we were making those videos, you'll see that at one point the sector you would have been up 284% in like 2.5 years, which is some astounding gains, especially if you consider that we were just in the early stages of the bull market. So it really looked like the offshore sector was really rebounding and recovering really well, and that this was the awesome trade, and all you had to do was stay on it. So, despite that early optimism, offshore drilling has not rebounded as quickly as expected. Investment in deep water projects have been delayed, leading it to a drop in the offshore drilling companies' stocks. So, as there's been a delay in projects, you can see that the stock prices has really plummeted. So, what is actually the reason for this delay? So, one of the main reasons is actually supply chain issues. So, I won't claim to be an expert on this, but basically, you have this huge vessel here, which is a FPSO, which is a floating production storage and offloading vessel. And basically, what this is that you have a drilling company, so they come in and they drill the well, and so when they start pumping oil, they need to store that oil somewhere. And that oil is basically stored in this huge vessel. The problem here is that there is a backlog of these vessels. There's just not enough of them. So why would you start drilling if you have nowhere to pump and store the oil? And this article covers that whole dynamic, how the Chinese shipyards available, the space available is really diminishing, and that there's a huge competition between these vessels and commercial vessels for that space. So projects are being delayed because they don't have access to this type of vessel, and due to that, it's basically created this downward pressure on the stocks, because they, as the shipyards are backlogged for years, is pushing the project timelines out. So it's basically pushing the bull market offshore out into like 2026, 2027. Now, of course, we have the other reasons such as capital discipline. We know oil companies rather, you know, do buybacks, etc. They're quite hesitant to spend the capital at the moment. And also, personally, I believe it is not the oil price, as we covered in my previous videos, that these offshore sector is really competitive, and that at $50 oil, they're profitable. But of course, a higher oil price would, of course, naturally impact these stocks in a positive way. So that's why I believe that we have seen this unexpected delay in the bull market of the offshore sector at the moment. So just to cover some CEO insights on the delays, this was from the Q4 quarterly calls. Yeah, both of them are actually reaffirming the same thing, that demand is deferred, but the long term outlook still looks strong. Same here. The medium term outlook looks not so great, but you know, the long term outlook looks much more positive, or should I say, the short term outlook. And that's mainly because we're seeing that delay in these projects. So, one of the main reasons why I still stay bullish on the offshore sector is the need to basically replace oil reserves. So, this following article actually covers it quite well, and it actually highlights how global oil reserves have actually fallen by 52 million barrels since 2023. And this article actually highlights how oil companies will have to basically start increasing exploration for to basically replace the diminishing effect of the oil reserves. And as we covered in the past, most of the world's global oil is actually in the offshore sector. So we expect that these companies will start funding more capex and more money into exploration into the offshore sector, which is of course very beneficial for these stocks. So that's one of our biggest bull cases for the offshore sector. Now, I also briefly want to touch on the energy transition. So, a major factor previously was just a slowdown in investment, was the fear that oil assets would basically be left stranded due to the energy transition. Many investors actually believe that the world was shifting towards electric vehicles and renewable energy, and that the demand for oil was less important. However, we've really seen like across the board that narrative really just basically turned out to be false. And we've seen that oil companies are recommitting to exploration because they recognize that oil is critical to global energy security, and that demand for fossil fuels is still very strong. And as we mentioned, deepwater drilling is expected to play a key role in supplying future energy needs. So we're expecting this shift of mindset to basically gradually bring back capital into the oil and offshore sector. So my final takeaway is that the rebound has been delayed. That was mainly due to the supply chain bottlenecks that we covered, and that the recovery is taking longer because of this. And that we're more outlining that maybe we'll see an uptick again in the share prices in 2026. So I believe this year really is a great opportunity to reallocate to this sector. Now, this is not investment advice, I'm just a small retail investor, just sharing my thoughts. Never take this as investment advice, but the stocks are extremely cheap at the moment in my humble opinion. And there has to be a reason why they're cheap, right? It would be very annoying if everything was perfectly fine in the offshore sector and this stock was doing this kind of price action. But personally, I really like this kind of price action is that it's going up when day rates utilization is climbing up, and it's going down when you're seeing a delay in those projects. So it feels like the stocks are really trading on fundamental narratives. And yeah, in my opinion, I am investing more in here. I'm DCing in, and yeah, that's my opinion. I think it will do very well, just in a basket of these. And that is my thoughts at the moment in the offshore sector. Still bullish and still holding for the long term. Thank you.